Basketball is a game of legends. It's a stage where superheroes are born, where impossible feats become everyday highlights. And few names shine brighter than Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq was larger than life in every sense, 7'1", over 300 pounds. A man who could break a backboard with a single dunk and smile while doing it. On the court, he was unstoppable. Defenders bounced off him like cartoon characters running into a brick wall. He collected championships, finals MVPs, all-star appearances, you name it. Shaq did it. He wasn't just a player. He was a phenomenon, a force of nature, a living, breathing cheat code for any team lucky enough to have him. But even superheroes have weaknesses, and Shaq's weakness wasn't another superstar, or a brilliant coach, or some impossible defensive scheme. No, his weakness was standing just 15 feet away from the basket, that lonely, quiet place called the free throw line. Yes, the same player who could dominate entire teams, who could dunk through double coverage, who could intimidate the fiercest defenders in the league, froze at the simplest shot in basketball. And every time he stepped up, the entire arena seemed to hold its breath, not in anticipation of a guaranteed point, but in suspense of what kind of chaos was about to unfold. Shaq at the free throw line was unpredictable. Sometimes the ball clanked off the rim so hard it looked like he was trying to break that too. Sometimes it didn't touch rim at all, just a straight-up airball that made fans cover their faces. And once in a while, just often enough to keep hope alive, the ball actually went in. And when that happened, the crowd erupted as if they had just witnessed a miracle. Let's put this in perspective. Over his 19-year NBA career, Shaq made just about 52% of his free throws. That's barely more than half. A coin toss. Flip a quarter in the air, call heads or tails, and you basically got the same odds as Shaq making a shot from the charity stripe. Think about that. A man who could overpower the best players in the world, who could score 40 points in a playoff game, had the same chance of hitting a free throw as you guessing the coin flip. It didn't matter if it was the first quarter or the closing seconds of a tight finals matchup. Every trip to the line was an adventure, and that adventure made Shaq unique, because no matter how many times he missed, no matter how awkward or ugly it looked, people loved to watch. His struggles were part of the show. They gave us suspense, they gave us comedy, and they gave us a reason to hold our breath every time the referee handed him the ball. So how did it come to this? How could one of the greatest players of all time turn such a simple shot into a nightly roller coaster? Well, that's the story we're about to tell. Now, to really understand Shaq's free throw struggles, we need to look at the numbers. And trust me, these numbers are hilarious. Across his career, Shaq attempted more than 11,000 free throws. 11,000. That's a mountain of opportunities. And how many did he make? Just over 52%, which means he missed more than 5,300 times. 5,300 bricks. Imagine building a wall out of those misses. Forget a wall. You could build an entire fortress, a Shaq-shaped castle, complete with towers and a moat, all made out of basketballs bouncing off the rim. One of the funniest stats, in some seasons, his free throw percentage dropped below 50%. That's right, a professional NBA player, one of the best ever, was basically guaranteed to miss more than he made. For fans of the other team, it was comedy gold. For Lakers fans, it was pure stress. And then there were the games where his struggles became legendary. Let's go back to January 20th, 2001. The Lakers played the Portland Trail Blazers. That night, Shaq stepped up to the line 39 times. 39. That's more attempts than some players have in a month. And how many did he make? 13. Just 13. That's 26 misses in one game. If you were in the stands that night, you probably spent more time groaning than cheering. But that wasn't even an outlier. In another game, he missed 11 straight free throws in a row. 11. Imagine doing the same thing wrong 11 consecutive times in front of 20,000 people. Most of us get embarrassed missing once at the local gym. Shaq missed 11 straight in the NBA and then shrugged it off like it was nothing. And it wasn't just the misses, it was how he missed. Sometimes the ball would slam off the backboard like a rocket launcher. Other times, it would barely graze the rim, rolling off like a lazy marble. And then, there were the airballs. Shaq airballs were special because when a 7-foot, 300-pound man misses everything, it's not just a miss, it's an event. Fans gasped, commentators cracked jokes, and opponents laughed behind their jerseys. It got so predictable that the crowd's reaction became part of the show. Shaq at the line turned arenas into comedy clubs. Every shot was a setup. Every miss was the punchline. And once in a while, when he actually made two in a row, that was the plot twist no one saw coming. But here's the paradox. The worse he shot, the more people wanted to see it. The free throw line became must-watch television. Because with Shaq, it was never boring. You didn't know if you were about to witness the ugliest miss of the season or the miracle swish that made the crowd explode. These numbers, these failures, weren't just stats on a page. They were memories. They were stories. They were the reason fans leaned forward every time he stepped to the line. And as bad as they looked, they became part of what made Shaq unforgettable. And of course, when the numbers got to bad, when coaches realized they could actually weaponize his weakness, that's when an entirely new strategy was born. A strategy that would change basketball. A strategy with a name so perfect, so simple, it became part of NBA history. Hack-a-Shaq. When your weakness is that obvious, opponents won't just laugh at it, they'll use it against you. And that's exactly what happened with Shaq. Out of his struggles, a new strategy was born. A strategy so bold, so shameless, and so perfectly named, it became part of NBA history. Hack-a-Shaq. Here's how it worked. Instead of trying to stop Shaq in the paint, which was nearly impossible, defenders would foul him on purpose, wrap him up, grab his arms, push him, anything. Send him to the free throw line, where the real defense began, because odds were he'd miss. Simple, brutal, effective. Coaches used it like a cheat code. Games turned into parades of Shaq walking to the line, bouncing the ball, taking his awkward stance, and clanking shot after shot. Sometimes, he'd spend entire quarters doing nothing but shooting free throws. And fans? They had mixed feelings. Lakers fans groaned. Opposing fans cheered. Neutral fans? They grabbed popcorn because they knew they were about to see a comedy show. One of the most famous uses of Hack-a-Shaq came during the 2008 playoffs, when Shaq was with the Phoenix Suns. The San Antonio Spurs fouled him intentionally over and over, forcing him to shoot 20 free throws in one game. He made only 9. The Spurs won. The strategy worked. And this wasn't a one-time thing. Teams like the Spurs, the Trail Blazers, even the Detroit Pistons all used it. If you had a close game and Shaq was on the floor, why not foul him? Why risk him dunking on you when you could just send him to the line? For the almost guaranteed misses, commentators had a field day with it. Every time he got fouled, the jokes flew. Well, here comes the adventure. Shaq at the line. Place your bets. Don't go anywhere. Folks, you never know where this ball is headed. It turned NBA broadcast into part sports, part stand-up comedy. Even Shaq himself couldn't escape the humor. He once joked, "I make them when they count," and sometimes he did, in big moments, under pressure. He'd knock one down and roar like he just won the championship, but far more often, the misses piled up. Hack-a-Shaq got so extreme that the NBA actually discussed changing the rules. Games slowed down, turned ugly, and some fans hated it. Imagine watching the final 2 minutes of a game take 15 minutes of real time, all because Shaq kept getting fouled and sent to the line. The league considered penalties for intentional fouls, just to stop the madness. But for all the controversy, Hack-a-Shaq cemented Shaq's reputation. It showed just how dominant he was. Teams were literally willing to foul him on every possession rather than let him get near the rim. Think about that. One of the most powerful players in basketball reduced to a strategy of hit him before he hits you. And it wasn't just about numbers. It was about the spectacle. Fans still talk about Hack-a-Shaq today, not just because it was effective, but because it was entertaining. It was frustrating, hilarious, and unforgettable, all at once. Shaq turned the free throw line into theater. He was the star, the villain, and the punchline, all in one. And while Hack-a-Shaq slowed down games, it sped up his legend, because even his flaws were larger than life. But here's the thing, those flaws didn't ruin Shaq. If anything, they made him even more beloved. Because sports aren't just about perfection, they're about drama, comedy, and humanity. And that's exactly what Shaq gave us every single night. Which brings us to the final chapter of this story, how a weakness became part of his greatness, how failure turned into entertainment, and why Shaq's bricks might just be as legendary as his dunks. Now, after all the numbers, the misses, and the endless Hack-a-Shaq debates, here's the truth. Shaq's free throw struggles didn't ruin his career. They didn't stop him from winning for championships. They didn't stop him from being finals MVP 3 times. They didn't stop him from becoming one of the most beloved players in NBA history. If anything, they made him even more human. Because here's the thing about sports. Perfection is boring. Nobody remembers the guy who did everything flawlessly but had no personality. We remember the ones who made us feel something. The ones who gave us drama, suspense, comedy, and stories we can tell decades later. And that's what Shaq gave us. Every single night, Shaq's dunks made him a superhero. But his free throws, they made him relatable. They reminded us that even giants have flaws. Even legends can look silly. Sometimes, even Superman can miss. Think about it. When you go to your local gym and you break a free throw, you feel embarrassed, right? You look around to see if anyone noticed. But then you remember Shaq, the Hall of Famer, the champion, the global icon, and you realize, if Shaq can miss, so can I. His weakness gave fans a weird kind of comfort. If the big man himself could laugh off an airball, maybe our mistakes aren't so bad after all. And that laughter? That's another part of Shaq's magic. He never let the jokes destroy him. He leaned into them. He smiled. He shrugged. He made commercials about his bricks. He laughed along with the crowd. Instead of hiding from his flaw, he owned it. And that made him even more likable. In a way, Shaq turned failure into entertainment. Every trip to the line became an event. Will he make it? Will he miss? Will the ball end up in the stands? Nobody knew, but everyone wanted to watch. He made free throws must-see TV, and that is an accomplishment in itself. And let's not forget, even with all the misses, Shaq still scored over 28,000 points in his career. He's top 10 all-time in scoring. He dominated games so completely that his free throw issues became more of a running gag than a true weakness. Because at the end of the day, Shaq always found a way to win. That's the paradox. The very thing that should have been his downfall became part of his legend. We don't just remember Shaq for the championships, the dunks, the backboards he shattered. We remember him for the chaos at the line, the suspense, the comedy, the way one of the greatest players of all time could also look like the clumsiest guy in the gym. And maybe that's why Shaq is still everywhere today. On TV, in commercials, on social media. He's still larger than life. Not just because he was great, but because he was real. His free throws weren't just misses. They were moments. They were entertainment. They were a reminder that even legends stumble. And that's okay. So the next time you see Shaq highlights, don't just look at the dunks and the blocks. Remember the free throws too. Remember the suspense, the groans, the laughter, the memes, because that's part of what made him unforgettable. Shaq was Superman in the paint. He was a cartoon character at the line. And together, those two sides created one of the most iconic careers in NBA history. And if you thought Shaq's bricks were wild, just wait until you hear about the baseball game that refused to end. 33 innings of pure madness. That story is coming up next.